What if I told you the first time I trusted my gut was as a freshman in high school in the middle of a Sephora? Welcome to the Trust Your Gut podcast. You know, we live in a world that runs on mostly logic and reason, but I'm here to provide you a roadmap to life using the most ancient and arguably underrated form of wisdom, your gut. This podcast explores all you need to know on how to harness your own intuition through life's highs and inevitable lows. From relationships to parenting, to wealth management and career shifts, I'll walk alongside you to better understand how to lean into your own intuition for guidance and support. My name is Dr. Alaina Puff, school psychologist turned intuitive coach, and I'll be guiding you through this adventure as I share my personal and professional experiences on how I learned to tap into my own intuition and how this changed my life forever. Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Trust Your Gut podcast. My name is Dr. Alaina Puff, and I am going to be your host today. Today, I am joined by a wonderful guest, a fellow friend and colleague of mine, Brittany Shulla. Thank you for being here, Brittany.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yes, it's going to be amazing. Brittany is someone that I have probably known for about over a year now. Brittany and I run in the same circles, and she has an amazing business and perspective of working as an officiant with couples, but she's not just your standard officiant. She brings a special energetic twist to her ceremonies that I am so excited to share with you all today. So before we get into it with Brittany, I want to go ahead and give you a little bit more information about who she is and a little bit more detail about her work. So Brittany found wedding ministry in 2020 when she was invited to work with her mentors, Let's Not, K-N-O-T, and Say We Did, who specialized in adventure and destination elopements. After she experienced her first wedding, she was hooked. Before she had that experience, she was a wellness facilitator teaching yoga and mindfulness dating back to 2010. Through a decade of teaching yoga, meditation, trauma healing, recovery work, and other modalities, Brittany continues to stay deeply curious about understanding people. She has been graced to understand how we as humans fulfill our deep core needs to feel loved, safe, and seen. Officiating by Brittany is the name of her business, and the purpose is to dive deep into understanding couples' love stories, and she guides her couples to create a one-of-a-kind ceremonial experience. From smudging to sand pouring, vow writing assistance, family prayer circles, Brittany offers an experience and passion for what she does. She assures that her couples have a sacred space for this very important day. After working with over hundreds of couples varying in all different ages, backgrounds, races, and religions, she now has a deep understanding of what a real partnership entails and loves to hear each unique journey shared by her couples. She loves falling in love with your love story. Oh my gosh, how wonderful, Brittany. Thank you again for being here with us today. Reading your bio, I have so many questions that are kind of pouring in as far as different directions to take this. But I think where we should begin today is just, really understanding what brought you to doing ceremonial work around weddings, elopements, kind of what drew you to this as an interest for your business and career.
For sure. First of all, it's always like I don't hear my bio read much. It's always so cool because you're like, oh, it like hits you differently, and the energy is really nice. It's like relax and feel it because we're always go 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 to the next thing in our business, so we don't reflect as much. I don't, so
yeah,
that felt good.
Good.
Yeah. So officiating literally found me. There's another long drawn out story about like I had a post-it note and wrote ordained minister on it and put it on my wall, and it like manifested 2 months later when I like I had left yoga, moved away, and came back to the valley. So the timing was divine. I really do feel like God brought me into ministry work. So Let's Not and Say We Did. They were friends of mine that started a niche market, wedding market, which is elopements and specifically adventure or destination elopement. So until I was in the wedding industry, I was I really didn't know all the types of weddings out there and the options, which is a really cool part of my work and which makes me so passionate about authenticity and helping couples know their options when they're getting married and, you know, the scale of it, the energy of it, the space of it. Who do you want at your wedding with you? You know, I don't think we ask those questions enough. We think it's cookie cutter or we just don't know what we don't know. So I started in the elopement side, which was beautiful for me because I love hiking and I love nature. And it was so intimate, right? You're marrying two people on a mountain is very different than a 200-person wedding at the Biltmore, you know, in Phoenix. So it just found me. I started mentoring under Rich, they basically have this collective of officiants, photographers, guitarists, hair and makeup artists. So I started under them. And then about a year in, I started Officiating by Brittany. So I'm in year 4 of this awesome business and the ever evolving pieces of it. It's so cool to always see what couples find me and what couples I get to work with because even though I have a kind of style and I really draw in couples that want that creativity piece, it's so broad who works with me, ages, religions, desires of things they want to implement. So it just keeps evolving. I keep staying open. I keep trying to refine my process and it's just awesome. So very sacred, big day of people's lives. Like sometimes I get so humbled because I'm just can't believe I'm doing it, but I'm supposed to be doing it. So
Yeah, oh, how beautiful. And yeah, you speak to the sacred nature of what you're witnessing. Like to bear witness, I think
Mhm.
about the times that I have attended people's weddings just as a guest, and just like it humbling is exactly the essence that is captured in every one of those ceremonies. Is just like I get to bear witness to these two people who are deeply in love and deeply committed to each other. So I can only imagine you are holding that space for that whole group, whether it's an elopement or more of a traditional style ceremony. You are the captain of the ship. So I can only imagine energetically that experience for you. I was wondering if maybe you could go back in time. You know, I'm always interested thinking back to the younger versions of ourselves. Do you have
Mhm.
any recollection from like your early years growing up around being exposed to wedding ceremonies or any kind of like in those environments that maybe how that resonated with a younger version of you?
I like that question, and I haven't thought about it. No, but what I would say that I think found me in terms of the energy of it is my background with, so we all have the love story process and working on commitment issues, working on attachment styles, all this stuff. But I feel like mine was a little, I've always been obsessed with that part. Like how we relate in our relationships, sexual intimacy. So that part has always been there. And I guess little girl, I was definitely that romantic that would picture her wedding day. I've always been that type of girl.
Mhm.
Um, like again, we have romantic, like, you know, spectrums. And I'm definitely on that like daydreamed while I was supposed to be listening to a lecture in class kind of thing.
Right.
So that's probably the little girl part, not necessarily wedding specific. I have always seen myself in any type of image that I'm supposed to be public speaking. So that,
Mm.
and I've always been in that teaching, speaking setting. So that's really cool to even see how that shifted from teaching yoga because even like teaching a yoga class to officiating a wedding, there's a lot of similarities, especially when you're projecting and you're having to feel the energy of everyone there and when do you go quiet and when do you open. Like it's a fun dance that just I've always kind of been in that setting. So
Yeah, wow. That's really interesting how you're finding parallels in like your more mindful based practices and being able to integrate them into this new experience. I could only imagine, just as someone who is also client facing in my business, every client is different. For me, every family has a different tangible energy to them. And so it's like really having to almost contort yourself in a way to meet that group where they're at. So I imagine you're doing that with
Mhm.
couples. So what is your experience around working with couples who are coming in with very different energies around their maybe their
Mm,
perception of what the ceremony will look like, or maybe their intention for it? How do you navigate kind of any discrepancies that you might be able to tune into when you're having initial conversations with couples?
for sure. Just so I understand the question, discrepancies like maybe in my meet with me in my process or with each other or both.
Both.
Okay. Because I'm like, oh, I've only had a couple. No, the couple itself are usually always on the same page. So that's not, which is a good sign. Because if you're bumping up against each other planning a wedding, either maybe someone's overly stressed or something's off. But what is so cool is well, first I kind of get a gauge of where they're at within their planning process. And I know like right away, even from an inquiry, what they've already thought of, what they have no idea to ever think about, and if they're kind of in the middle. So I've had some brides that are like, not many, but I've had some brides that are like, here's my wedding script. I'm like, okay, that's not what we do. So I've had that before. Um, and I've had couples that don't even really know what goes into a ceremony. And so I'm kind of guiding and asking, that my first initial call with them is always so interesting because I don't know where they're at with that. I feel like as a professional in my niche, it's my job to educate them on all their options. So I also try to do that without overwhelming them because wedding planning, even if you're doing an elopement, and those of you that have eloped or done a micro wedding still find out there's a lot of planning. It doesn't matter the scale. Um, you're on a lot of calls, and I really try to make those initial conversations just really relaxing, me getting to know their energy. So one question I like to ask a lot is like, okay, what's your scale? Like, okay, where is it? How many people? And then if they go 50 people, I go, was that the initial guest count? Because I also try to figure out like, did they start with 10 or 5 people and it just slowly built to this big wedding that they really didn't want to be big? Right. So there's all these pieces I'm just kind of picking up on. And um, for the actual planning process, what makes it really easy is I have a questionnaire that I've developed and it goes over like verbatim everything like religious, non-religious. Are you being given away? Do you want to speak your vows that you've written? Do you want to repeat after me? So I kind of go into these like key components of a wedding ceremony and then they go, yes, no, maybe. And we co create it. It's definitely a co creation. So,
I feel like that's probably not the norm in a lot of situations. Unfortunately, I think my experience in talking with other folks
mhm,
in the wedding industry or people who have gone through it is it's a very like they're the expert and they're the ones like telling you. It's more like directed at you. Can you
mhm,
speak about like, because I think that co-creation piece is something that sets you apart.
mhm. Well, I love your questions. And I totally agree. Like my body got tight, not from you, but that part of telling them what to do. It it's a balance. I'll start with this balance. I've had to balance out owning my voice, guiding the couple. I am a professional and I know what I'm doing. So I do have to give them the menu, right?
Mhm.
I can't just say, "Well, hey, what do you want?" Like that freaks them the hell out and they don't even know. So, I do think couples might be having weddings that aren't authentic to them. Now, with that said, that doesn't mean they didn't enjoy it and they love the hell out of it and it was a beautiful day that they look back. I've just seen extremely authentic, conscious ceremonies, and I keep saying energy like a gazillion times. It's just so different. They're not thinking about what everyone else wants as much. The day of, they're not so stressed and trying to be so hyper controlling of the outcome of everything happening. They're more easygoing and laid back. So I do think it's our job as vendors, especially like an event planner. Now, the great thing about an event planner is, they do hold that space. Now, I can't speak to every wedding planner. I've worked with very amazing ones um, that do help that, I always think of that as a gauge. Like, are they stressed on their wedding day? Now you could just have someone that's more anxious because they're excited. But if we're doing our job right as vendors, they shouldn't be asking questions the day of the wedding. They shouldn't not be knowing what's going on. So in my lane of officiating, that's taken me time, like not learning the wedding industry. And okay, I'm an officiant, but I'm not just going to leave and go. I'm going to check in with the coordinator, and so there's all these things that I strive to keep getting better at. And with the ceremony, I just have such a good job as part of the wedding day because it's the heart. Like, I get their hearts, and it's not hard to be authentic in my expression of their story when I ask the right questions. So asking questions a lot is probably the best thing. And maybe that's the answer to your question, is maybe other wedding vendors don't ask as much because they've done weddings so much one way for so long, and they have a little tunnel vision. Again, I'm not speaking to specific vendors, and those, I have a deep respect for people in the industry for 20 plus years that I've met. I just think everything's ever evolving. So
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking to the authenticity of these ceremonies, and I don't know, I think for me as someone who is unmarried and, thinks about what that might look like, I am like, and is solidly in my 30s, like I am turned off from the whole traditional wedding piece of
mm-hmm,
it for a myriad of reasons. I mean, first and foremost, watching my friends and family go through the process, especially it seems to fall, and again, this could vary, but gender norms, it falls on women in a lot of cases where they take the lead and they're planning these weddings, and they get up into the day and then they're like, this isn't even what I wanted, like let's just go elope at this point. And
mm-hmm,
I hate that for people because it's doing them a disservice, and it's really taking what's
mm-hmm,
supposed to be this really beautiful ceremony between you and your partner and diluting it. And I
mm-hmm,
noticed that like the division of labor is never the way that it is across the couples. And so it's something that I think in society we're really kind of taking it, at least I think our generation is really taking a step back and going, wait a second. The other piece that is, undeniable to ignore here is the cost. I mean, you put wedding anything attached to it, and
mm-hmm,
there's such an inflated markup on it that people are like going into debt to have these weddings. And it's just a
mm-hmm.
very unconscious industry. I think it's very
Right.
business driven, and it's like, how do we get the most bang for our buck? We have these two people who are vulnerable because they want to do this to like show their love for each other, but I feel like we've gotten so far away from that. And that's why I really wanted to bring you on here, because you're disrupting that. Like, you're coming in and saying, let's pull it back here, get off the Pinterest boards, and like let's
Mm-hmm,
look at what your intention is for this and how we can
mm-hmm,
create that. And so I'm just really inspired that there's people like yourself out there kind of realigning what this whole intention of marriage really looks like. It's very inspiring.
I like that word. To your point, I'll go back to the male female piece too, or the gender piece. I and that disruptor. I think what was interesting for me was going into this industry during COVID, because the industry shifted. And when I talk to people newer like myself and OGs that have been doing this for 10, 20 years, there's this different wave and it's recalibrating again. So it was like COVID was, yeah. So it's like it, like anything in society or even in our own lives, think about it. We hell no, we go this way and then we recenter. So I think it's recentering right now. I don't think if it wasn't disrupting, I wouldn't have a job. Like you had a minister or you had, okay, I don't want to go too far into that topic, but I get excited. I think because COVID brought people to trim the fat, right? You had to cut down on costs. You had to cut down on people that could be there because you couldn't have more than 20 people in a gathering. So I think it started this open minded piece in that conscious development versus unconscious planning. Because, like I said, I didn't even know this. I didn't know my option was to have it at a venue or not. I just think you're married, you have a year to plan, you go pick a venue, you go get bridesmaids. Like, you don't have to do any of that. But I didn't know until I was exposed to it. So that's why vendors educating is huge, asking the right questions. And yeah, not just, and I know so many people in this industry, so I've seen those very conscious, I think it's about branding yourself properly, which I'm learning too. Like the luxury event planners that want the big designs on the table setting, it's gorgeous. And the people that want that know, and they're drawn to them. So I think it's the bride and groom's job to a point to like pull back, slow down, and then the vendor's job to like, okay, we're starting to do this, and you're talking really fast, you're feeling really tight, you've changed your mind 5 times, like what's going on, right? Like sitting down, slowing down. Again, I can't speak to the process of other vendors, but I would imagine it's like any dynamic, right? If you feel like they're unhappy or that they're just kind of buying things that you don't even know if they want. The male female thing's interesting because those couples don't tend to find me much because of what I do. It's very detailed what I do. So I already I'm not attractive to couples that just want a cookie cutter ceremony anyway.
Right.
Now I've done some of those, and especially when I started, I said yes to everything and I loved it because I just got to, but I had those calls, like, I've had those where we're talking about the wedding ceremony and the guy's quiet the whole time and it's really freaking uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't feel good about what I'm doing because they're not engaging with it. Something's off. Now, I'm not saying that has anything to do with their dynamic as a couple. I think women just like details more too. So it's also normal for them to want to take over pieces because a guy might really like, I wonder, since we're talking about it, if you ask most males their ideal wedding, it's probably more elopement, right? And then have a cool hangout party. I don't know. Everyone's so different, but that's why I like how you said with even your families, you do that. I think of chameleon. I don't know what word you used, how you move with your families.
Contort.
But contort, yeah. That's why it's fun to do what I do, because I don't want to say I only do elopements or I only do religious or non-religious. I want to do everything if you let me give you something super sacred, though. What I will not do is I'm not going to go up there, read a couple things, and be in and out in 5 minutes. Because
Right.
if you're going to plan the day and spend that much money, I don't understand why you're skimping on the ceremony. It's funny, though. I mean, even like ritual, right? That I got into that through yoga and my self work, right? Think of ritual, think of sitting down and writing affirmations. Like all of that also is a preference of, cultures, right? Culturally, there's some cultures that are way more ritualistic and they light candles all the time. And, you do your oracle cards, like those are kind of the people that are drawn to me because they just want more of that. But Evoking most couples, I will say, this is the inquiry that's always funny to me. I want something simple. No, you don't. You want something, what other word but authentic? You want something with the fat trimmed so that you're focusing on the parts that make you feel good. I had a wedding that was one of the bougiest weddings, and it was so authentic to them. It was in their backyard. They are hostess with the mostest. They were so chill. There was like 250 people in their backyard.
Wow.
They were cool as cucumbers. They loved it, but it was them, right? And they wanted to spend money on this, like, they had like a homemade, I talk about this wedding all the time. It was like they had 8 people that made your homemade pasta, from like rolling the dough to, and they had a cheese wheel that was probably $3,000. So it's like, here's that. And then here's like a Sedona mountaintop where they're from Minnesota and they wanted to be in the desert. I've done like a pizza party on top of the Grand Canyon. Like, those are extremely different experiences.
Yeah.
So I think if couples, I don't know what the answer is. I think it's just exposure, educating them. But yeah, the couple knowing, you can have a florist, you can have a DJ, you can have a buffet, but it's like, yeah, I think it's our job to educate them because they don't know what they don't know. And to not push our style onto every couple. And that's hard when you want to make a sale, when you want to, like, I've had couples that I've seen it where I like desperately like wanted to work with them. It's just not a fit.
Right.
Or vice versa. Like, they hire me and then we get into the planning. I'm like, I don't think I'm what you want because you can't answer 10 questions. So yeah, the branding marketing side for me has been like, I've just been paying so much attention to it.
Yeah.
And seeing what other vendors are doing that really well, and who, from working with them, their couples are like really, really happy. So
it sounds like
I kind of went in all directions.
No, it's helpful. I think it's like
Yeah.
the pieces that are really standing out to me. It sounds like, for our listeners who are maybe in committed relationships or marriages, something that they're talking about, and maybe they're even in the wedding planning process. It sounds like the first step in that is really getting on the same page with your intention, because by the time you start, regardless if you were to go to someone like yourself or maybe more of a traditional vendor, you would have to be able to communicate a vision. And I think
For sure.
for me, like, I want to jump into like the sacredness and the intuitive piece of this as well. But for me, like, where I sit in my own personal perspective is that if y'all aren't on the same page in planning your wedding, what is that going to foreshadow for your marriage? Like, I think
communication, right?
Right.
Like all of it. Communication, planning, discussion.
It's the foundation, arguably, for your marriage. And so I think that's what has upset me in the past, is seeing my friends or my family go into these ceremonious environments not on the same page. And I'm like, what the heck? It's only going to get harder, guys. Like, you're building something that is going to be lifelong. And so I really do think it is so important. So with that being said, I'm obviously curious through the intuitive lens. Like, you're obviously a very open, intuitive person. How do you infuse that into your business to really capitalize on the sacredness of these ceremonies with your clients?
Yeah, I'm still learning how to market that. It's been actually really difficult for me. Like, for example, one thing I've come across that I'd love to share with you is, like, say I'm on like a wedding platform and here's a list of officiants and I'm charging this, my pictures look a little different. It's like, I try to use the right words, like sacred. It's like, it's such a process, and it's not a game, but you have to, like, it is like, you have to, it's my job and I know my duty because I have this gift and I want couples to have this option to utilize it. I'm learning how to market that still, because you can't, video's been helping a lot, like more video photos can kind of capture a bit. Done a little blogging, that kind of stuff. Just highlighting that each couple's love story is like, I you have a template. I have a template, like anything, work efficiency, like religious, Christian, or elopement, no guests, right? Like I have a workflow, but I've never ever write the same wedding ceremony twice, ever. Like it's impossible. So, that's the basis, is like, and again, a preference. Like if you want someone to come read a few lines, like, but you've touched on being a guest, like you've been to weddings where maybe the minister or the officiant is like saying love is blah blah blah, and you're like, well, that's it for you, but not for me or for them, right? And you're like the guest, that you know the couple really well, and it's just kind of cringy.
Yeah.
It's just like I don't want to put myself in that situation. So again, when I was starting out, I had to do a couple of those but even then I tried to, I've learned how to pull out their hearts. And it really is my questionnaire. I've like added a lot, like a couple of questions, not all of them, but like, what's your pet peeve? What's a small, daily way that you give to your partner? So there's such a list. And then there's the logistics side. Like, do you have a bridal party? Do you not? What music? The things that just help me know. But maybe most officiants just know the logistics part and they know nothing about the couple. And then another one that I don't want to poo-poo, because it can go really good or really bad, is having your friend or family member do it. I've attended very beautiful weddings, my family members getting married by, Uncle Sam, Uncle Bill, and it works out. But I've also had best man speeches, with their friend, and they're looking at their cell phone. They have it on their cell phone and they're looking down, reading from it verbatim. And it's just like, again, at the end of the day, it's beautiful and you'll laugh at it. But if you're going to take the time to plan it. So I don't even know if I really answered your question, but I guess that touches on the sacredness of it is, I'm big into ritual. I think all these little pieces, unity ceremonies, I don't push anything ever on a couple, but I highly suggest personal vows. I actually have vow writing guides that I keep refining, and every couple gets that works with me. And some of them get vow books, like those personalized vow books, and ritual. I try to always bring up unity ceremonies, and there's a lot of modern ones nowadays that are really cool. I've had one couple, an example, they met at a brewery. It was called Serendipity Brewery. They lived in this small town. They shotgunned a beer from Serendipity Brewery, and it was wonderful. We were out on a mountaintop. And I've had other couples have their family members come up and put Post-it notes and blessings in a jar because they met via Post-it. Like, she put a Post-it on his car and said, "Cool car," and he caught her. Like, these are just stories that you can't make up, and it's like, well, how do we put you in it, guys? Like, is this too corny? No, this is cool. Let's do it. So that's the questionnaire, really giving them creative ideas. How do you feel about this? Yeah, I can keep going. The way you talk about the symbolism of a knot, like a unity knot, can be a gazillion things, right? So it's like, I geek out on words, like how can I spin this, or even like what comes out of me is so channeled because I'm like, that's cool, that flows. Like, I might have a rhyme or something that just comes out of me and I didn't try to do it. So, or a joke because they're more sarcastic. I guess that's the intuitive part. I'm just trying to get out of the way and write the ceremony.
Yeah.
So,
oh my gosh. No, that resonates so deeply, even with my experience working with clients and families, is that sometimes things will leave your mouth and you're like, that wasn't me. That was That was
Yeah.
something higher up for sure. And so it sounds like that is really a cornerstone of how you kind of navigate your ceremonies with your clients and your couples. It sounds absolutely beautiful. And tapping into like your intuitive gifts in a way that maybe wasn't expected. I think that definitely sets you apart in
Hmm.
that regard for sure. Um, that is amazing. Okay, so I have kind of more of a fun question for you. I want you to speak to I had the word coolest written down, but cool could be interpreted a different way. The most memorable ceremony that you've had and why.
Hmm. I was probably the first one was probably the pizza party on the Grand Canyon that I already brought up. Um, there's so many just pieces that like you asked that question and my brain goes back to like a feeling,
Yeah.
like doing a smudging at the Paseo, which is this gorgeous luxury venue, but everyone was quiet and we all did deep breathing
Mhm.
and I smudged them. Like that was just amazing. Like harnessing energy in a huge space like that. My most memorable from beginning to end was probably this couple from Ohio that got married in Arizona. So they were second marriage. Second marriage ones or third marriages are also really sweet for me because I just talk about authentic. They've just really learned what they don't want. It's a lot easier for them, I think, to answer those questions. Um, and they've kind of got over like anything that's Cinderella, but is just the sacredness is already there because they really know what they want. So, second marriage, we met in Flagstaff. I got to caravan with them to the Grand Canyon with them and their two daughters. So, like, I love elopements or micro weddings, especially outside, because I'm with the couple a lot longer. At a typical wedding, I'm in and out. But so I got to drive with them and you're hiking, so it's not like I'm done and I leave. Like I caravan with them, so I got to stay and do watch the photos being done, and then they brought pizza and beer and wine and we sat on the Grand Canyon, and they had, I believe, like two other couples of their friends with them, so it was very small. And then they invited me, we're going, they're like, stay for cake, so I like hung out with them the whole day. And some couples will ask me like stay for the reception and stuff, and I just kind of feel into that part too. But that one was just sacred because um, and they wrote vows to their daughters. They each had a daughter from a separate marriage. So there's just talk about sacred. It was just so much fun, so much celebration. The weather was gorgeous. The view, was gorgeous. I get to see really cool places outside that you can get, licenses to go have a ceremony and that process. Um, and you're hiking and they're taking different pictures. So that was probably the best, one of the most memorable. I don't want to say the best, but
It sounds amazing. And like you
yeah.
mentioned this before you got into the details is the feeling that came through. And I think that is like
Mm-hmm.
at the heart of kind of our conversation today is like logistics are just that. They're
Yeah.
logistics. But like I think what you
Mm-hmm.
capture when you work with your clients is the feeling, the essence
Mm-hmm.
of what's going to come through in that ceremony. And I just think that creates such a palpable energy that people can experience and use that to
Mm-hmm.
carry forward in their marriage. I mean, it's just something to me that makes sense. And so I, again, am so happy to be able to showcase your work and really see you help recalibrate this industry that kind of has gotten out of hand in some ways to bring it back to the primary purpose of joining two souls together in a beautiful, authentic way. And so, with that being said, tell our listeners how they can work with you. What are your current offerings for folks who are
For sure.
give
So sorry, there was a little delay.
You're okay.
Yes. So anything ceremony from wedding ceremony and vow renewals. I love doing vow renewals. Same process I do for a wedding. And I have an offering that I'm wanting to touch on more, which is private vow ceremonies. So these are kind of like they sound. You're doing a unity ceremony, you get your picture, your typically it's with the first look, before a wedding. And it's me and the couple, maybe their photographer and videographer. And it's just a great, beautiful time to do more of the ritual part if you are having a larger wedding and you want that sacredness and that special time together. So you can even call it like a blessing, a marriage blessing. Um, and so private vow ceremonies, I'd love to do more of those. And the few I've done are just out of this world. And yeah, vow renewals and any kind of ceremony that. And I do have some workshops coming up, but that's still in a refining process. I have a couples. The date is still needing to be finalized, but it's me and a sound healer, and we're doing a couples meditation for fall equinox. So
Beautiful, beautiful. As a point of clarification,
yeah,
do you just do weddings here locally in Arizona, or are you willing to travel for our folks who are out of state?
I, I love that question. No, I will travel absolutely, and I love the opportunity to do so and be in different cool spaces. And I'll hike up to your ceremony spot. I'm one of those officiants, so I won't rock climb or jump out of an airplane though. So I have
She has
limits.
boundaries, everyone. So
I
listen
have
closely.
boundaries.
Well, that's
Yep.
amazing. Wow. I am just like so blown away by this conversation. And I want to thank you, Brittany, for being here today and sharing more about your passion and your gift and how you are bestowing that to these beautiful couples that are stepping forward and claiming something different. Thank you again for being here, Brittany Shulla. I will go ahead and include Brittany's information and offerings in the show notes if you want to check her out. Thank you again for being here, Brittany.
Thank you for having me and asking really cool questions that, yeah, I think needed to be asked, and I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you to our listeners at home. Appreciate you tuning in to another episode of the Trust Your Gut podcast. We'll catch you on the next one.